You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
The regular season is heating up, new stars are emerging, and that means more opportunities to win up to 25 times your cash on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projection on a wide variety of stats, and place your entry. It's that easy. Let it fly to turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Easy gameplay, quick withdrawals, and injury insurance on your picks are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Watch your favorite players and get paid doing it this basketball season. See your entries make progress during the game or make new entries for the second half and the fourth quarter. 3-pointers, assists, rebounds, and everything in between are yours for the taking. Join the Prize Picks community of more than 7 million players who have already signed up. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Everybody, and welcome to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me, your host, Katie Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. Welcome back, friends, Romans, countrymen. But if you are new here, this is your disclaimer. Here on this show, I like to use language which some have referred to as colourful as Belfast street art, so you might want to brace yourself for a ride that may not be suitable for delicate ears. If you do happen to be easily offended by the occasional expletive, then this may not be the podcast for you. If, however, you're not worried by the words shit, piss or bollocks, then salutations and welcome to the Guild of Historical Dissent. Now, before I get into anything else, I want to thank you so much for your 5-star reviews. I've been getting them on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. It helps so much. You have no idea. I was number 18 in Croatia. I was in the 30s in Pakistan. Who is listening to me in Pakistan? How do you understand my accent? Now nobody's got an excuse. I'm sorry. Croatia and Pakistan. If you can understand me, nobody has an excuse now. Nobody has an excuse. I don't care, right? If you get it. Granted, I am still impressed that people are listening to me in Ukraine, because I like to go through the analytics and see where, the majority of my audience is from, and I like to see where I'm ranking in different countries, and it does take me a lot of time, and sometimes I'm not even ranked, but I spend a lot of time just going through, and it's amazing to have all this reach and have people listening to me across the globe. I don't know how else to explain how weird it is. I mean, it's fantastic, but it's really, really humbling, actually, because, little old me, in a bedroom in rural Ireland, and there are people in, massive cities, in war zones, in, the back end of nowhere as well in other spaces, and they're listening to me. You're listening to me. There's probably somebody in rural Arkansas. Does Arkansas have a rural part? I don't know, but I just wanted to say Arkansas. I could have just said Kansas. I've been to Kansas. I know people in Kansas listen to me, although I don't think it's quite rural. But yeah, it's fine. But yeah, I finally put my oar in the ring. No, that's wrong. Put my oar in, put my hat in the ring. One of those things. I applied for the Irish Podcast Awards again. So this year, there's an actual history section. So I've gone in for that. So that's going to be fun. So I'm in there, and I was planning to get into the early bird, so it would be €100 less to pay. And I got called twice on the day about having it, because I had half the information filled in, but I just didn't have the audio ready to go. And I was planning to fix it once I got home. But unfortunately, my phone was going crazy that day because of the whole Titanic episode situation. And yeah, I missed the deadline. So now I'm in with everybody else in the later deadline, which costs more money, which is not the smartest option I've ever done in my life. But here we are. And hopefully, I'll at least rank, because it'd be nice, because I have an outfit planned. I have an outfit planned for an event in November that I may not even be invited to. So this is fun. This is good for me. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about your jibber jabber. In fact me. In fact you I will. But first, we've got to get our source on. Our sources are Caterina Sforza by Pier Desiderio Pasolini. Caterina Sforza and the Art of Appearances, Gender, Art and Culture in Early Modern Italy by Joyce de Vries. A History of Milan under the Sforza by Mary Cecily Addy. The Art of War by Niccolò Machiavelli. Caterina Sforza, the Lioness of Rome by Marco Veroli. Barons and Castellans, the Military Nobility of Renaissance Italy by Christine Shaw. Caterina Sforza by Cecilia Broggi. The Tigress of Forli, Renaissance Italy's most courageous and notorious countess, Caterina Riaro Sforza de' Medici by Elizabeth Lev. And of course our old favourites, biography.com, smithsonian.com and history.com.
Are you sitting comfortably? Good, then let's begin.
Okay, so now I know I'm the one that writes this and puts it all together and creates this. Clearly you can tell this is all me by my terrible editing skills, but I have noticed a sort of prevailing theme occurring across the podcast as a general rule, and that's unlikable women. I love talking about unlikable women because the fact that they are unlikable, it usually means that their story's been twisted in some way and it's been messed about, and I want the truth. Even if this person isn't, a bloody angel, because humans are flawed and I think they're more interesting with it. And so that leads me to today discussing the life of an absolute bitch. Bloody lover. Caterina Sforza, who was probably one of the better represented characters in the Assassin's Creed games, or female characters, I should say. Like that game series just buggered up stuff all the time, especially when it came to women in history. But I mean, it was fairly close when it came to her. But anyway, Caterina Sforza, the Renaissance woman, she was just a powerhouse of her time. And the thing about her being unlikable is the fact that there were so many men at the time who had the same power, who were doing what she was doing for the most part, or at least some of it, and they would not be treated the same way. Like, if a man is cruel, it's like, oh, he's cruel, it's whatever. But if a woman is cruel, it's like, oh my god, how dare she? But yeah, it's such a whole thing. And I'm not sure if I mentioned her at all in the Lucrezia Borgia episode, which is still the funniest to me because I spent like half of the time calling Cesare Borgia Cesare. And I was like, no, I'm not going back to record it. I'm not doing it. It's been 2 hours. I can't. I just can't. Oh my goodness. But yeah, let's get into Caterina before I ramble for another 20 minutes. Okay, so Caterina Sforza. She was born in 1463. Do we know anything else? Do we? I mean, she was born in Milan, which is good. We have a location and we have a year. See, now, women in history usually don't get a birth date, especially illegitimate ones. So, Caterina was the illegitimate daughter of Galeazzo Maria Sforza and his mistress, Lucrezia Landriani. So, this Lucrezia, as opposed to new Lucrezia, she was married to Count Gian Piero Landriani. And so, he was actually friends with Galeazzo, like Like, they were pals. And he was stripping the wife. Renaissance Italy is a wild place. So for the first few years of her life, she is raised by her maternal side, her mum's side of the family. And she ends up being, like, really close to her mum. And they stay close throughout, like, all of her life. But when she's 3, Galeazzo, he becomes the Duke of Milan. And so all of his children are brought to court. They're brought in, and he acknowledges their existence. And this is handy because children are very good bargaining chips. They're really handy for alliances, things like that, especially daughters, because they are easy to sell. Did I say sell? I meant trade. Did I say trade? I meant find them a good, decent husband so that they can have a good marriage for God and stuff. And political alliances. But yeah, so she grows up being from an Italian noble family. She gets educated. It's a humanistic education, so she's learning science and math and Latin and other languages that I'm not entirely sure of. Italian, obviously, because she's from Italy. But I assume she learned, like, other sort of notable languages in the area. But, like, this is the same sort of thing we saw with Catherine of Aragon. Like, noble women, high-ranking women, a lot of them received the same type of education as their brothers because you didn't want to fuck them about. You didn't want to raise stupid kids, right? That was their goal. Like, you wanted them to be astute, yeah? So they're doing that, but also this is like the burgeoning sort of Renaissance. It's coming. It's coming over the hill. And so, they're being exposed to, like, poetry and art and music. Like, it's very enriched. Oh, that's so bougie. I'm so bougie. Enriched. It's an enriched education. What is that? No. But anyway, so when Caterina and her siblings, when they're all brought to court with, the Duke of Milan, their father, who, by the way, also an arsehole, and they basically get entrusted into the care of his mother, who is going to sort of raise them right, effectively. Now, when she is 5 or 6, after the Duke's first wife dies and he remarries, his second wife adopts all of the children, which then further legitimizes them, But Renaissance Italy is just brimming with illegitimate children at this point. There's just so many of them. Like, it was very, like, common, and I'm not saying it was accepted per se, but it was accepted in certain circles, in certain noble circles. But yeah, she's adopted by Bona of Savoy. So between her and her grandmother, she has this very political education. She's very astute, and she also sort of ventures into, like, botany and apothecary. So this understanding of these sort of scientific elements, right? And she also learns to hunt because, like, the Duke of Milan loved hunting. And so she was often going here and there with them, and as such, learned to hunt. So according to sources, Caterina Sforza was tall, slim, beautiful, and just very well appreciated in the Milanese court. And by the time she's 14, they're like, she is ready. Let's get her wed. Remember what I said earlier about, using your children as tools for political alliances? Yeah. So she's 14, and who do they think is the best match for her? Well, Nope, that's not how you say that. I'm keeping that in because that's funny. That's what I sound like when I mess up names. Girolamo Riario. I can't roll the R today. It's not happening. Girolamo Riario. So Riario, as I shall call him, he was 29 and she was 14. Now, I'm sorry. I don't care what fucking era you're in. That is shitty as fuck.
That is disgusting. And Riaro, he is the nephew of Pope Sixtus V. And he's the Pope's nephew, so clearly this is an advantageous match. Unfortunately, Riaro was an absolute dick. So he's known as being like cruel and cowardly and lusty is the term. So basically, he was slipping his sword into everybody's sheath, right? He was out there doing it, clearly. So they were married and they end up having 8 children. Now only 6 survive, but altogether they have 8. And now before somebody goes all, I wish you couldn't have hated him that much. Listen. She was expected to do this. She was supposed to bear his children. That's just how it worked back then. And it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it good. It makes it absolutely shitty. And it's fucking awful that even today men think this is the way things should be. Sorry, no, get a grip, get a life. Just go into the outside world and speak to actual humans. You might learn a thing or two. I'm just saying, sorry, I've had a lot of trolls recently, and clearly I'm getting irritated by the consistent misogyny in our society. But like, I think when they were like originally betrothed, when this was agreed upon, she was like 10 or something. But by the time she's 14, she does need this marriage. She actually does need it because in 1476, the Duke of Milan, her father, is assassinated. So she's a 14-year-old girl. She needs safety and security and protection. How much she'll get from this dude, I'm not sure. But she ends up having to go there. So, in like a lot of weddings at the time, especially between nobles, it has to happen by proxy because he just can't get to Milan, or he doesn't want to get to Milan. It's unclear. But they have to have the wedding by proxy. And then she has to hoof it over to Rome. Off she trots. And when she gets there, Riario, he is not keen on her, having an opinion or any sort of clout or anything like that. And so he straight away bans her from being involved in politics, which kind of sucks because the people there, they don't really like him, but they actually do quite like her. And because he is so much of a dick and she is less of a dick, her popularity continues to grow. And she's also connected to the 2 richest families in all of Italy. So the Pope's favourite nephew dies, and then Riario, he ends up getting a job working for his uncle, because nepotism in it. And he's like, he's the second favourite, but he ends up being gifted Forli, right? So Caterina becomes the Countess of Forli. And the whole plan of it is they're supposed to improve it because it's been vacant. And so Riario is trying to like win the people over in this area by like rebuilding it, renovating, and just trying to like abolish taxes just to make him seem like, I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom. You know what I mean? He's just like, hey, adore me. It doesn't go that well for him, but sort of society really starts to acknowledge and appreciate Caterina. So when Caterina is 19 years old, she suffers from quartan fever, which is like this type of malaria. And this illness, it basically affects her for the rest of her living time. Her life. The rest of her life. And she fucking hated it. She hated the fact that she was an invalid. And when she was going through it, she went through it alone. Because are we fucking surprised that Riario wasn't there? No. Plus, in France it's probably better that he wasn't there because, again, he was an arsehole. And it gets to the point where things are going pretty well up until the death of Pope Sixtus in 84. And Caterina, she is 21 years old and 7 months pregnant. There is fucking chaos, right? There are mobs, places are being looted, like all of the homes, or like most of the homes of the Pope's relatives are being fucking plundered, right? And it gets to the point where she's just like, fuck this for a game of soldiers. And she goes down to the Castle Sant'Angelo, right? And I cannot stress this enough. 7 months pregnant. This is not an easy thing to do at any point in your life. But she gets on a fucking horse and heads all the way down. She crosses the Tiber and she gets to the Castle Sant'Angelo. And she gets there, and being someone who was brought up by some very strong women who managed to teach her not only, diplomacy and alchemy and all that other fun stuff, they also taught her, basic military knowledge. And again, remember, she was out hunting, she was out learning. So she convinces the soldiers to fucking listen to her, a woman who is pregnant, okay? And she manages to take control of them and sort of keeps an eye on the Vatican. Because, their home there, it had been stripped, nearly destroyed, the whole shebang. And so the cardinals, they go to Riario and they try and broker a deal. And they're like, hey, we'll let you keep your lordship for Imola and Forli. And we'll give you a military post for the church and 8,000 ducats. And he's like, cool, yeah, thanks, that's great. And Caterina, she's like, not too keen on this. Feels a bit dodgy. And so she gathers more soldiers and she gets ready to build up a bigger resistance until they agree to have her keep an eye on them. However, because Riario, got paid off, it fucks up her power, her bargaining chip here. And so she has to give up and she ends up surrendering the castle back to the cardinals. And that's 13 days she's holding it, which still, 21 years old and pregnant. Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Fargo, the new virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, makes banking faster and easier. Like this.
Fargo, what's my checking account routing number?
And this.
Fargo, turn off my debit card.
And this.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries last month?
And that's just the beginning. Do you Fargo? You can in the Wells Fargo mobile app. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
Terms and conditions apply. Your mobile carrier's availability and message and data rates may apply. Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., member FDIC.
And they end up moving back to Romagna. They just kind of vacate. And he tries to increase his popularity. He's trying to do well. Unfortunately, he's too busy raising taxes and being an absolute pumpkin. He ends up fucking things up so much that there are several uprisings against him. It gets to the point where Caterina decides to, take things into her own hands and orders that 6 of the rebels should be beheaded. Now, I know you're trying to make a point here, Caterina, but it does feel a wee bit extreme to just go decapitating people. I mean, I understand it's the Renaissance, but like, just, have some herbal tea. Have some limoncello. Just, cocaine a wee bit. But things really come to a head in 1488, and that is when the Orsi brothers kill Riario. They are conspiring against the whole team here. And so they come in, they kill him, and they take Caterina hostage, but not just her. They take her mother, 2 of her sisters, or like half-sisters, all of her children, and one of Riario's illegitimate children, and takes them all hostage. But Caterina being Caterina, and this may be apocryphal, but this is my favourite thing I've ever heard ever. See, before she managed to get captured, she got word out that, shit was going down. It got to her uncle in Milan, and basically to not allow anyone to take the castle under any circumstances. Don't fucking surrender. And so basically when the Orsi brothers try and take control and try and get them to surrender, they're like, yeah, we're not going to do that, because do you really want to have to face Caterina's brother, the current Duke of Milan? Do you really want to fuck with that? I don't think you want to fuck with that. And so they're like, okay, not this time. And so they are demanding that she surrenders to them, and she is basically telling them absolutely fucking not, right? She's telling them no, it's not going to happen. And they still have her kids, and they threaten to kill them. And so the story goes that she lifted up her skirts, flashes her vulva at them, and tells them that she has the instrument to create more. Go ahead. Like, what fucking game of Russian roulette is this woman playing? But she's like, yep, go ahead. I can make more kids, motherfuckers. Was this bravery? Was this saving face? Was this just, just foolhardy, just knuckleheadedness? Was it? Whom's to say? So the Orsi brothers, they are so fucking shocked at this that they just decide, no, this isn't worth it. And they don't harm her children. They don't do anything. They just get the heck out of Dodge. But she's not one to forgive and forget, like, at all. Not even, like, a little bit. And so she arrests and executes the Orsis and their families. With the help of her uncle, of course. But not just that, she ends up becoming the ruling regent for her son, who is, like, the heir of Forli and Imola, right? And so she gets there, she lowers taxes, she takes control of military training, and she just starts building alliances. And she is really taken to this. She's sorting out marriage negotiations, she's giving gifts and building alliances. And throughout this as well, she does have her little pastime, because everybody's got to have a hobby, and hers happens to be, alchemy and other such fun medicinal stuff. So she has this manuscript that she writes throughout her life called Experimenti, and in it there are like 454 recipes. So some of it is for medicine and cosmetics, and then there's also the creation of false gold, like that is apparently in the book, but yeah, it's got just like, she's making her own like face masks and stuff, and she's doing all this like medicinal shit too, like to the point where the plague erupts. She is out there actually caring for the sick and the ill, which is really, it's really weird, because she's such like an aggressive, like stern woman, but she's also out here physically tending to the ill. And so because she was out here and she was entering like areas of infection and she was out doing stuff, that it really built her reputation as a leader, because, you know, the common folk just saw her as amazing because she was entering places most people wouldn't enter. Like, maybe she was, you know, understanding of how, or had had a concept, I suppose, of how disease spread and things like that. Again, this is a time where people didn't realise that washing your hands was good. I mean, in like Western Europe, you know what I mean? Like Africa, people in Africa and India and the Middle East were washing their hands like all the time. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. So, but yes, Caterina is ruling in the stead of her son. And, you know, things are going okay, but she's allowed to have a personal life too. So she ends up marrying Giacomo. Giacomo is the younger brother of the castellan of her castle, and he's 20 years old. So Giacomo, he is, well, a bit of an arse too. So things are going okay and things are going well, and she apparently really cares about him. But he becomes tyrannical as his power grows. Like, she was besotted, and it got to the point where she is doing everything he says. She is agreeing with all of his demands and whims, and he is getting so power hungry and so tyrannical that, like, he ends up slapping Ottaviano, who is, you know, the ruler. Like, she is ruling in his stead. She's the regent, right? He is the heir to all of this. He is the big dog. And he smacks him. And so, because it's generally believed that he was trying to, like, usurp, you know, Ottaviano's, like, power and his titles, and they were genuinely worried that Caterina was so besotted with this man that she was going to strip, like, her children of their titles, of everything that was owed to them, and she would just give it all to him. And it gets to the point where, you know, enough is enough. And he is such a shitbag that he ends up, just like her first husband, assassinated by conspirators, who may or may not have included members of Caterina's own family. So, she is mad. She is pissed off. And like she did before, because Italian custom of the time, if someone, you know, kills your family, you get to do bad things to them and their family. Like, that's just a weird tit for tat thing they had going on, which doesn't make sense. So what she does is she finds out who some of the conspirators were, obviously. She finds them, she finds their families, and she has them tortured and executed. See, these assassins, right? They were hired by her children. But as far as she is concerned, it's these assassins which are the ones that need to be punished. So she punishes them, and their wives, and their mistresses, and their children. Like, about 20 children, including infants, were tortured and murdered. So, by 1496, which is a year after husband number 2 has been dealt with, she meets Giovanni di Pierfrancesco de' Medici, which is a long name. And so her children and her uncle approve this marriage, and they get married the following year. And then a year after that, husband number 3 dies. This one of natural causes, or so we have been informed. So in the 1490s, Venice and Florence, they are not getting on. And because Forli is in between the two, she was worried that it was going to be used as like a passage. So like from one enemy territory to the next. And yeah, unsurprisingly, that was the case. And so she ends up building up the militia. She's training them. And during this is when Giovanni, he contracts pneumonia. And he ends up bedridden. There's like, he's not going to make it. And she ends up staying with him until he passes away. Like, she's by his bedside. But even though, she's dealing with that, clearly not feeling the best, she ends up having to protect Forli from Venetians. And after several attempts of them trying to just trundle through her, she forces them to retreat. And so she ends up being known as La Tigre, the tiger. And at this point, the people are still relatively supportive of her. See, every now and again, people would show up just to try and keep an eye on Caterina because they didn't trust women rulers. Because see, Forli and Imola, they are both, they're small, but they're both strategically placed. So geographically, it's a very good space to have power over. Unfortunately, even though Caterina was hoping to keep it neutral for a wee while, that wasn't going to happen. And I think I mentioned this in the Lucrezia Borgia episode actually, is that the Duchy of Milan and the Kingdom of Naples, they start getting at it. And of course you have Rodrigo Borgia, who's now the Pope. So he's Pope Alexander, and he happens to be the godfather to one of her children, so you'd think things were good. Gentle listener, things are not good. Because this whole thing, it's basically France and Spain at war inside Italy. And yeah, well, here's the thing. Was she trying to be neutral, or was she playing both sides? Because, double agents tend to get caught. I don't know if you know this, but it tends to happen. All the while she is, strengthening her foothold. She's building up her military. She's trying to be prepared. Because see, the Pope, he ends up allying with the French king in order to claim Sforza's region. So Imola and Forli. Because he wants it, and he wants to give it to Cesare. We know Cesare, not Cesare, it's Cesare. And so he is proclaiming that Caterina's rule of the land, or even her son's rule of the land, is illegal because that land belongs to the church. It doesn't belong to you. Because remember, it was gifted by her first husband's uncle, who was the Pope at the time. And, she's thinking, okay, well, that's one way to put it. Another way to put it is, here is my army, shut the fuck up. So they are stockpiling food, they are gaining ammunition, they are, she's training militia, she's getting ready, right? And she's getting ready for, this onslaught that's going to happen. And she asks for help from Florence, and Florence gets threatened by the Pope. And they're like, yeah, we can't help you. So when Cesare shows up with his army, the citizens let him in. They're like, yeah, cool, man, do what you gotta do. Because they don't want to fight this, because there's been a papal bull. They don't want to go against it. So he ends up having to, physically attack the fortress. They have to bombard it because the citizens have given up, but her fortress is still there. So they still have to get in there. So it gets to the point where they are just attacking it day and night. So she manages to get her kids out. She sends her kids to Florence, actually. She gets them away. And so she's supposedly in this impenetrable fortress. And so they're trying to get her to agree to a peace, and she's just flat out refusing. And they're just military bombardments, one after the other. It gets to the point where Cesare offers 10,000 ducats, dead or alive, And over the course of this siege, he's trying to get her, but it's just not happening. And then she even tries to capture him when he comes to the fortress to talk to her, but that doesn't work out. And this spreads like wildfire, all through Italy, to the point that Machiavelli ends up writing about it. The Machiavelli. And I think she ends up being the only, or one of the only women that he ends up writing about ever. But yeah, it gets to the point where Cesare realizes he ain't getting in. And so they're attacking the walls days, nights. And on the 12th of January, 1500, they break through. They storm the fortress, and it is a very quick battle, but it is a very bloody battle. And it gets to the point where Caterina is physically fighting these soldiers herself, sword in hand, like. And when she gets taken prisoner, she automatically just surrenders herself to the Ballet of Dijon, because she knows that if she's a prisoner of the French, like, she's safer because the French don't allow female prisoners of war. However, Cesare manages to get custody of Caterina from the French, saying that he isn't going to treat her like a prisoner. He's obviously going to treat her like a guest because she's a lady and he is a gentleman. So, They end up taking her back to Rome, and she's held in the Belvedere Palace. And she tries to escape, but she gets, caught very quickly, probably because she's very noticeable and people know who she is. And as she's imprisoned, they have to explain why. Why is this woman imprisoned by the Pope and the Pope's son's forces, right? And so, she tried to poison the Pope with poison letters. First of all, that feels like a metaphor, although there was, word sort of swirling around that Caterina did try and poison the Pope, especially considering she had, quite a good knowledge of sort of chemistry, really. But I do love, the wee conspiracies. One is it was poison letters. It was a powder he inhaled. Or my favourite one is a cloth dipped in bubonic plague. Because that's just something somebody carries around with them, innit? After a year, Caterina is finally released, but only after she renounces her fiefdom, right? And she has to sign over everything to Cesare Borgia. And so she is finally allowed to be free. And so she ends up retiring to Florence in one of the houses owned by her third husband, Giovanni de' Medici. And she does try to get control of her lands again after Pope Alexander dies and Cesare Borgia, who loses all his shit because once, Daddy Borgia is out the window, Cesare's just fucked. And so she comes back into Forli, and she's trying to win back the people. And they're like, yeah, no, you had us bombarded for so long that we're just not feeling it right now as a group. And so, because she'd messed things up so badly for them, by being so stubborn, the people just weren't willing to accept it. So, she ends up finally giving up. And she decides to focus on, her children, her grandchildren, her alchemaic pursuits, and just focus on her and, just living her best life. She was besotted, and it got to the point where she is doing everything he says. She is agreeing with all of his demands and whims, and he is getting so power hungry and so tyrannical that, he ends up slapping Ottaviano, who is, the ruler. She is ruling in his stead. She's the regent, right? He is the heir to all of this. He is the big dog. And he smacks him. And so, because it's generally believed that he was trying to, usurp, Ottaviano's, power and his titles, and they were genuinely worried that Caterina was so besotted with this man that she was going to strip, her children of their titles, of everything that was owed to them, and she would just give it all to him. And it gets to the point where, enough is enough. Because while she was in prison, or imprisoned, I should say, she had sent Giovanni away, for his safety. So Giovanni de' Medici, he was taken in by her brother-in-law, Lorenzo, and she wanted him back. She wanted custody of him. And there was like an ongoing battle for it. And, normally if someone was in prison, if they were a criminal, then they would lose custody. That was just it. But the judge, realised, like, you were a prisoner of war, which is not the same thing. And so she gets Giovanni returned to her, and she also gets his inheritance. So that is all safe, that's secure. She does have to pay back loans to the Medici family because they had to sort out a bunch of stuff for her while she was in prison, but she gets him back. And so she dedicates a lot of her time to him. Like, he's her favourite, he's the most like her in nature. And yeah, she gets him back. So she's in Florence, she's working on the Gli Esperimenti, she's working on her recipes, and then she starts getting unwell. So she has pneumonia in 1509, and it's like really affecting her. And it looks like she's recovering, but then it relapses. Like, it's probably because she had like liver issues and peritonitis and pleurisy. Like, so many things were going on in her. And she gets pneumonia again, she contracts it. And then the 28th of May, 1509, the Tiger of Forli, Caterina Sforza, passes away at 46 years old. She is entombed in the chapel of Limerat in Florence by a convent of nuns. And she had a cell there, a room, so that when she needed spiritual guidance or a retreat, I suppose. And there she stays for the next 300 years. But in the 1830s, the nuns have to leave and the chapel gets converted into a prison. And then at some point during this renovation, Caterina's bones disappear. So we have no idea where she is now. She's gone, whether they were destroyed, whether somebody just took them. We don't know. But they're just gone. But yes, so ends the story of Caterina Sforza, Renaissance women, and the Tiger of Forli. If you liked my retelling of the story, feel free to rate and review 5 stars. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything you like. Anywhere where you can review me. If you're on Apple Podcasts and you get the option to fill in the bit, it actually helps boost me up the charts. It'd be totally amazing if you could do that. Thank you so much. I love you. That would be great. I'm starting to lose my voice. Can you tell? Don't forget, you can follow me on all of the social medias. I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on the other ones, Instagram, Facebook, and I can't get on Threads. They don't have Threads in Ireland, so that's not a thing just yet, but I've also started uploading shorts to YouTube, so that's happening. All the links are in the description down below. And recommendation time. So for watching, I am going to recommend an old TV show. I'm going to tell you to go watch Xena Warrior Princess, because I'm not promoting anything new. If it doesn't already exist, we're not talking about it. So I want you to go watch that, because that is just fabulous. Lucy Lawless is just amazing. And also, I thought it could work with this warrior woman vibe we've got going on today. For reading, I'm going to suggest a wee whodunit, The Christie Affair. Am I going to tell you anything about it? Nope. Go read the book. I got a really nice version with a hardback cover, and it's gorgeous. I do love a wee book though. And for listening, I am going to recommend the For the Love of History podcast. And with that, I shall bid you farewell. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Bye-bye.